Well, we can now continue the conversation and cross live to independent journalist Mike Jones now. Mike, thanks for joining us on the programme. So what's your assessment of these revelations that the drones used by Kiev to hit targets inside Russia were produced in the US and outfitted in Poland?
I'm not surprised whatsoever. Anyone who's been following the conflict, even only in the Western media, will see how it's apparent how the West is tripping up over its own lies. I'm not surprised by the allegation of Poland's assistance. We've had it reported, even in Western media, about Polish mercenaries who are tragically getting caught up in this and having to be buried in large cemeteries in Poland. When it comes to the United States, it's almost an ongoing farcical pantomime, as we hear from John Kirby and Antony Blinken, both, I believe, on record saying we neither enabled nor encouraged Ukraine to strike beyond its borders. And yet, I believe, as I recall, M777 howitzers have participated in such attacks on one such as Belgorod. We have instances on the ground of the White House claiming that they oversee the targeting of targets first, and they give the green light. And yet, I've been on the ground in Gorlovka at a theatre where a HIMARS struck, and people there could not explain to me how these two claimed realities can exist in the same paradigm and the same world.
And timing-wise, this comes also just days after the CEO of US defence contractor Raytheon admitted to helping the US government call the shots on military targets for Ukraine. It seems like things are coming into focus, don't they? What do you make of the timing?
As we can draw inference from the numerous aid packages that the White House has approved, we know that a large portion of that stays within the US and goes through the likes of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, who are some of the primary benefactors of this ongoing effort to prolong this unnecessary sort of suffering down in the Donbass region.
To what extent is the US now a direct party to the military conflict in your eyes, and how do you think Russia could or should respond?
In my personal opinion, the US is the primary shot caller, not just with regards to the conflict itself and the supplying and arming and overseeing and orchestrating numerous actions, but also we see it in the political and geopolitical field of bullying European Union members to join, such as Poland, countries who have no business in this conflict at all.
And what do you make of Washington's continued denial of taking a direct part in the conflict? What's in it for them?
I think even many Westerners like me no longer believe a word that's been said, as we've kind of highlighted in just the previous conversation there, how they'll disprove themselves on a long enough timeline. So I think very little faith is given to the truth of the words that are spoken, and Sergei Lavrov is another one who's highlighted the, as I've said as well, the almost farcical point that we've reached when it comes to these politicians and what they say versus the facts on the ground as we see them.
Well, Russia would say that NATO countries are only prolonging the conflict in Ukraine and the suffering of locals by continuing to send more weapons to Kiev. Western politicians, however, insist the war must be won on the battlefield. What do you make of these conflicting approaches?
I do agree with this sentiment of the unnecessary prolongation of this, and I do, having seen the situation on the ground myself in Donetsk on the front lines, I do agree that the West, and particularly the US, leaves Russia and the people of Donbass no other choice. They sabotage attempts at peace and negotiations, as we saw in Istanbul. There really is very little choice that's left by design for many reasons, and the military-industrial complex, I believe, being one of the primary drivers.
Many thanks for speaking to us today. Really great to get your thoughts on things. We've been speaking to independent journalist Mike Jones.
Thank you.